name is Joe Bowser. I am a partner at the law firm of Roth Jackson in Virginia. And for the past 20 plus years, I have been representing UCaaS providers, telecom companies, text message platform providers, and heavy users of those services in TCPA, state law, federal lawsuit defense, and related consumer privacy issues that arise out of the operation and use of those types of networks. So if there's not a phone call or a text message or sometimes a fax involved, it's not something I usually touch. So enough about me. This opening video is going to introduce you to the idea of compliance. So anyone using Readymode has probably heard that term. And at a high level, compliance just refers to the idea that your use of the service complies with all applicable laws. Now, what those applicable laws are depends on how you use the service, who you're calling, the features you use, and the types of phone calls or maybe text messages that you're making. So in the same way that when we drive a car, we can't say that the speed limit is always 55 or 65. It depends on where we are. The conditions can change the speed limit. If you're a new driver, maybe you can't drive at certain times of night. You have a curfew, for example. So compliance is a flexible concept that varies based on the answers to those questions about how you're using the service, who you're calling, what you're calling about, what the purpose of the calls are. So the TCPA is often misunderstood to be a single law that covers one subject. That is a terrible misunderstanding that over the course of some videos here, we will hopefully correct. So when people talk about compliance, yes, TCPA features front and center. The DNC rules are embedded in the TCPA, but the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, also regulates the National DNC Registry and has its own telemarketing rules called the telemarketing sales rule. So the TSR can apply. If you are making healthcare related communications, HIPAA can apply. If you're a bank or insurer, you can have industry specific laws. And there are a number of state laws that can apply to your calls as well. So Florida, Oklahoma, Virginia, California, there's a number of state laws that can provide an overlay of additional compliance objectives that you want to keep in mind. The federal law has time of day rules for so-called telephone solicitations, which is its own term of art. And there you can't make calls at the federal level, those types of calls, after 9 p.m. and before 8 a.m. But various states restrict those times further or add holidays to the federal time of day restrictions. So as this short list already suggests to you, I hope, compliance is a flexible concept that you really need to sit down and map out how you're going to use the service, who you're calling, why you're calling, and work through the various federal and state law issues that your campaigns will implicate and come up with a plan to make sure that you and your team are both mindful of and complying with those rules, which change over time. I've been doing this 20 plus years, and what I did at the beginning is rather different from many of the things that we're focused on today. So again, compliance is just a high-level concept that you're using the services in a legal and lawful way. What happens if you're not compliant, right? Why should we even care? Well, there are a number of very good reasons. First, misuse of a telecom or SMS platform service can subject you to some very significant lawsuits. Perhaps your usage is lawful, but Congress that created and passed the Telephone Consumer Protection Act incentivized plaintiffs and plaintiffs' lawyers to pursue lawsuits for alleged violations of the TCPA by creating what are called statutory damages. So unlike a regular civil lawsuit, like a car accident, those plaintiffs have to prove that they were injured, that the defendant caused their injuries and that they suffered actual damages. Like, I went to the doctor and had $1,000 in medical bills, and my car had to be fixed by a mechanic and it cost $2,000. Those plaintiffs have to bring those receipts to court and prove that they were, necessary and reasonable expenses that were caused by the defendant's negligence. To incentivize TCPA lawsuits, Congress created this idea of statutory damages. So the plaintiffs don't have to prove anything other than that they got calls or texts, depending on the structure of the act and the issues at play, that violated the act. And the numbers are staggering. For the DNC claims, you can get up to $500, and for auto-dialed, pre-recorded, or artificial voice claims, the starting price is $500 per call or text sent with 227B violating technology to the types of phones that are protected by 227B. And we'll get into the different subsections of the TCPA in later videos. But suffice it to say that there is a cottage industry of plaintiffs' lawyers, professional plaintiffs, and various companies that are supporting those machines that are looking for TCPA violations all day, every day, apps that allow private citizens to put in unwanted communications into an app and generate demand letters, and the plaintiffs' lawyers who sue every day, right? I get daily emails of the new TCPA lawsuits, and at least 10 a day, certainly 50 a week. Thousands of new TCPA cases are filed every year, and many, if not most of them, are filed as putative TCPA class actions. So they're not seeking just to sue for the plaintiff's calls or texts. They're typically seeking to sue for every other call or text that you sent, like the ones that the plaintiff got, in the country. And so those are immediately bet the company cases in almost all events. So lawsuits are a major reason to care about compliance. In addition to that, the federal and state government agencies will also enforce the laws that Congress and the states have authorized them to enforce. So the FCC, the FTC, state attorney generals are all authorized to bring enforcement actions about your calls or texts, depending on the context. In addition, it's just a bad consumer experience to make calls or send texts that don't comply with the law. You will experience greater opt-out rates, do not call rates, if you do not have a compliant campaign. Moreover, if you're selling for someone else, you may lose your contracts. You may have committed in private agreements to comply with applicable law, which may include the TCPA or other state laws. So if you breach those promises, you may lose the right to sell the very thing you're trying to sell. So between lawsuits, government enforcement actions, and private contract disputes, those are three very good reasons to care about compliance. So Readymode and its associated phone company, AM Communication Labs, is like a car with safety features. It is set up to help you succeed, but because of all of the various rules and statutes that can apply to different campaigns differently, and it has a number of features that you can turn on or turn off, it's like a car with seat belts and cruise control, but it will only go so far for your compliance campaigns, right? If you need to know whether the DNC rules apply to your campaigns in the first place, for example. If it does, then you need to consider whether you're going to get consent, have an established business relationship, or some other exemption to the DNC rules. But if there isn't an available exemption or consent, Readymode has an integration that allows you to scrub your calling lists against the National Do Not Call Registry. Likewise, it has technical features that enable your agents to log internal DNC requests that your agents receive on the phone calls that your folks make. Similarly, if you're making telephone solicitations, the platform can include time of day restrictions based on the time that the telephone number that you're calling is associated with. So if you want to comply with the FCC's time of day restrictions that apply to telephone solicitations, you can turn that feature on. So it's like a car that has cruise control and seat belts, but you need to know what the speed limit is on the road that you're driving on. So Readymode can assist you in your compliance journey, but compliance is ultimately your responsibility because it's your calls that the call recipients and the government will understand to be your calls and your compliance responsibility. But Readymode and AMCOM provide compliance features that assist you in your compliance journey. So in later videos, we will dive deeper into what TCPA compliance consists of and walk through various other compliance topics in greater depth. But for now, this video is just meant to introduce you to the idea of compliance, some of the high-level laws that may apply to your campaigns, and some of the folks who you may hear from if your compliance journey is challenged. We look forward to talking to you in future videos.